The trade war between the U.S. and Canada is heating up. Can Ontario Premier Doug Ford resolve the dispute with President Trump? Amid escalating trade tensions between the United States and Canada, the Ontario government has taken a decisive step by suspending the 25% surcharge on electricity exported to the U.S. This decision was in response to President Donald Trump's decision to raise tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel to 25%. Previously, Ontario Premier Doug Ford introduced a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to U.S. states such as Minnesota, Michigan, and New York in response to President Trump's proposed tariffs on Canadian goods. This move led to a significant increase in electricity costs for these states, increasing household electricity bills by approximately $100 per month and costing each state $400,000 per day. In response, President Trump announced plans to double tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum imports from 25% to 50%. The suspension of the electricity surcharge aims to reduce tensions and resume trade negotiations between the two countries. However, the escalation of tariff measures raises concerns about a potential trade war and its impact on both economies. News of the impending changes in trade policy instantly roiled financial markets, triggering a period of unpredictable volatility. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, as if sensing a storm, plunged nearly 600 points, eventually closing down 478.23 points, continuing the previous day's dismal trend of a 900-point loss. The S&P 500 also declined, losing 0.7%, while the Nasdaq Composite avoided a significant drop, showing only a slight decrease of 0.2%. Anxiety crept into the hearts of investors. Could the escalating trade conflict with Canada be a harbinger of an economic recession? In this tense environment, Premier Ford held a series of negotiations with U.S. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick. The meeting was reportedly constructive, raising hopes for a possible compromise. As a gesture of goodwill and a commitment to de-escalation, Ford decided to temporarily suspend the electricity surcharge, paving the way for dialogue and mutually agreeable solutions. This move did not go unnoticed. President Trump reversed his recent decision to raise tariffs, preferring to keep them at the previous level of 25%. This chain of events vividly demonstrated how fragile and volatile trade relations between the two countries can be. It became clear that decisions made at the provincial level can significantly impact international trade policy, causing global markets to hold their breath with each new announcement. U.S. tariffs went into effect, imposing a 25% tax on steel and aluminum imports, immediately impacting trade relations with Canada and other countries. In response, Ottawa took reciprocal measures, imposing similar 25% tariffs on a wide range of goods imported from the U.S., totaling approximately $30 billion. Canadian sanctions targeted steel, aluminum, computer equipment, sporting goods, and iron products. Against this backdrop, future Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney expressed his willingness to engage in dialogue with U.S. President Donald Trump, emphasizing that any negotiations must be based on principles of respect for Canada's sovereignty. "I am open to meeting with President Trump," Carney said, "provided there is full respect for our country's sovereignty and a commitment to mutually beneficial trade solutions." Carney specifically noted the need to restore strong economic ties and security partnerships between Canada and the United States. He expressed hope that constructive dialogue would allow both countries to overcome current disagreements and strengthen long-standing allied relations. This position was voiced amid escalating tensions caused by President Trump's statement that it would be advisable for Canada to become the 51st U.S. state. "The only logical solution," Trump noted, "is for Canada to join the U.S. as our 51st state. This will automatically eliminate all tariffs and trade barriers." Such statements certainly do not foster an atmosphere of trust necessary for productive negotiations. In response to the proposals for a possible merger with the United States, the Canadian political establishment demonstrated rare unanimity, rejecting the idea with the utmost firmness. Justin Trudeau, the outgoing Prime Minister, stated categorically that even the hypothetical possibility of Canada joining the U.S. was completely out of the question. Echoing him, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre emphasized the country's unwavering commitment to its sovereignty, stressing that Canada will remain a strong, independent, and self-reliant nation. This stance resonates widely within Canadian society. Sociological surveys indicate that the vast majority of citizens, approximately 90%, oppose any form of unification with the United States. This unanimity has sparked a surge of patriotic sentiment, with Canadians demonstrating unity around national symbols and expressing their readiness to defend their country's independence. The determination to protect sovereignty is evident not only at the federal level. Provincial authorities are also taking their own steps to put pressure on the U.S. administration. In particular, British Columbia Premier David Eby has called for the introduction of a tax on American thermal coal exported through the province's ports. This initiative, aimed at protecting the environment and echoing earlier proposals from the Conservatives, is intended as a response to the tariff policies pursued by the Donald Trump administration. Environmental organizations such as Dogwood BC have been actively campaigning against the transportation of American thermal coal through British Columbia ports for many years, citing serious environmental risks and threats to public health. They argue that U.S. coal producers are resorting to using Canadian ports due to strict restrictions on the construction of new coal export terminals on the west coast of the United States. Of particular importance in this scheme is the Roberts Bank Deep Sea Port, located in Delta, British Columbia. It includes the West Shore Terminals, the busiest coal export terminal in North America. This terminal plays a key role in handling both Canadian metallurgical coal and American thermal coal destined for Asian markets. It is noteworthy that Canadian coal mined domestically is subject to provincial carbon taxes, while American thermal coal exported through British Columbia is currently exempt from such levies. This fact raises questions about the fairness and consistency of environmental policy. Thus, the export of American coal through Canadian territory has become an important part of North American coal export infrastructure, especially with regard to thermal coal destined for Asian countries. This trend has been significantly influenced by the environmental policies pursued in the Pacific Northwest states of the United States, which have forced American coal producers to seek alternative routes through Canadian ports. In 2023, the Port of Vancouver solidified its position as one of the key thermal coal export hubs in North America, handling an impressive 17.6 million metric tons of this strategic commodity. Notably, approximately two-thirds of this volume, or 11.7 million metric tons, came from the United States, where the coal mining regions of Montana and Wyoming, with their rich Powder River Basin, have become major suppliers. The remainder of the coal was mined in Canada in the mines of British Columbia and Alberta. The thermal coal passing through the Port of Vancouver is mainly used for electricity generation in fast-growing Asian markets. Countries such as China, Japan, and South Korea rely heavily on this fossil fuel to power their electricity grids, supplementing it with other energy sources, including natural gas, nuclear power, and renewable resources. The demand for thermal coal in Asia remains consistently high, driven by continued industrial growth, the pursuit of energy security, and seasonal fluctuations in electricity consumption. Despite global efforts to transition to cleaner energy sources, coal continues to flow into the Port of Vancouver via a complex rail network. Canadian Pacific Kansas City and BNSF Railway play an indispensable role in transporting American coal across the border, ensuring the continuity of supply of this vital energy resource. The lion's share of Canadian coal is shipped overseas via the West Shore Terminals, located at Roberts Bank. This giant complex, capable of handling up to 33 million tons annually, is rightly considered Canada's largest coal export hub. Other players, such as Neptune Bulk Terminals, also contribute to the export of both metallurgical and thermal coal. The West Shore Terminals, located in the Fraser River Delta in the heart of the Roberts Bank Superport, is breaking all records for congestion among North American coal terminals. Its strategic location makes it an indispensable link in the supply chain of Canadian coal to the global market. It is here that the flows of Canadian metallurgical coal and American energy coal converge to then be sent to their consumers in different parts of the planet. Year-round and at all times of the day, West Shore terminals operate relying on advanced technologies. Automated ship loading systems, high-speed conveyor lines, and integrated dust collection systems are all designed to minimize the environmental impact of production. The terminal invests heavily in infrastructure modernization, striving not only to increase efficiency but also to reduce coal dust emissions, which is a matter of serious concern for local residents and environmental organizations. In addition to federal measures, a number of Canadian provinces are independently developing and implementing their own strategies aimed at protecting regional economies and industries. For example, the Ontario government ordered the cessation of sales of American alcoholic products in provincial stores, which became another lever of economic impact. Quebec preferred a more formal approach. Premier François Legault instructed the Treasury to audit all government contracts with American suppliers. The goal is to reorient as much as possible to local or alternative international partners, avoiding cooperation with American companies where possible. Following Ontario, Quebec took a similar step and the Société des Alcools du Québec (SAQ) removed all American alcoholic products from the shelves. This move was aimed at directly hitting American companies that benefit from trade with Quebec while strengthening the province's economic independence. Alberta, known for its strong trade ties with the United States, initially hesitated before taking such radical measures. However, Premier Danielle Smith eventually changed her position, approving the introduction of strategic tariffs on American goods that could be imported from Canada or from other international partners. The Alberta government also initiated negotiations to diversify its supply chains to reduce dependence on imports from the U.S. in key sectors of the economy, indicating a long-term economic shift, not just a response. British Columbia took a more selective position. Premier David Eby announced that the Provincial Alcohol Distribution Division would cease purchasing spirits from U.S. states under Republican control. This economic measure was designed to send a political signal while minimizing disruption to the province's broader trade relations with the United States. In response to escalating trade tensions, Nova Scotia took decisive steps. Premier Tim Houston doubled tariffs for American truckers crossing the province and simultaneously instructed the local alcohol corporation to stop selling American liquor. Manitoba and Prince Edward Island went even further, imposing a complete ban on the import of alcoholic products from the United States. Premiers Wab Kinew and Dennis King stated that these measures were necessary to protect Canada's economic sovereignty, emphasizing that local businesses should not fall victim to an unfair trade war waged by the United States. In Yukon, Premier Ranjit Pillai supported this initiative by suspending the import of American alcohol and initiating a review of contracts with American suppliers. In addition, the Yukon authorities were considering introducing tolls for American transport, but have so far postponed this decision pending further negotiations. The new wave of tariff wars between the United States and Canada has painfully hit the established trade and economic ties between the two countries. Just recently, in 2024, bilateral trade reached an impressive $773 billion, covering a wide range of products and services. In response to U.S. duties, Canada imposed its own tariffs on imports from the U.S. totaling approximately $2.7 billion, targeting such important categories as computer equipment, sporting goods, and iron products. The economic consequences of these measures have been quite tangible for many sectors of the economy, causing disruptions in logistics chains and increased costs for businesses and end consumers. The U.S. automotive industry, which relies heavily on supplies of Canadian steel and aluminum, has been particularly hard hit. The increase in tariffs has led to higher raw material costs, putting automakers in a difficult position, either bear the additional costs or pass them on to buyers. For example, take the Ford F-150, one of the most popular vehicles in North America, which extensively uses aluminum in its construction. Analysts have calculated that the increase in the price of this metal due to tariffs could raise the production cost of each F-150 by approximately $400. This burden could be passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices or force the company to find ways to cut costs in the production process. The impact of economic measures extends far beyond the automotive industry. Tariff barriers erected against Canadian exports and retaliatory measures against American goods have affected a wide range of industries producing consumer electronics, household appliances, and sporting and recreational goods. Computer equipment, a key element in the system of cross-border trade, has faced increased import duties. This, in turn, has led to higher costs for retailers and, consequently, potential price increases for end consumers. A similar situation has arisen in the field of sports equipment. Goods such as hockey sticks, bicycles, and exercise equipment, which are partially or fully manufactured in Canada, have also been affected by tariffs. American retail chains and distributors are reporting increased purchase prices, which will inevitably be reflected in prices on store shelves. Blocking the export of American coal through British Columbia ports carries serious economic consequences for the U.S. coal industry, especially in the context of the volume and value of exported products. The average price of American coal on the export market fluctuates and depends on the type of coal as well as current market conditions. In 2022, coal exports from the United States reached an impressive 85.9 million short tons, which is about 14% of the total production in the country. This coal was shipped to 71 countries, demonstrating the global demand for American energy resources. If we extrapolate this data, the approximate value of 11.7 million metric tons, or 12.9 million short tons, of American energy coal passing through the Port of Vancouver is estimated at more than $1.5 billion annually. Imagine that the province of British Columbia suddenly blocks the export of American coal. What then? American producers will face enormous logistical difficulties in reaching Asian markets. The lack of alternative export terminals on the West Coast capable of handling such volumes will inevitably lead to increased transportation costs, reduced export deliveries, and, as a result, financial losses for American companies. Such a disruption in the export chain could trigger a wave of negative consequences. The closure of mines will become a bitter reality for coal-producing regions, and job losses will hit the economies of states such as Montana and Wyoming, where the coal industry plays an important role. Moreover, the reduction in export revenues will inevitably affect the U.S. trade balance, which may have broader economic consequences for the entire country. Canadian retaliatory tariffs in response to U.S. trade policy have not been without consequence for the American economy, affecting the interests of both entrepreneurs and ordinary consumers in various industries. The Government of Canada, in response to Washington's actions, imposed duties on American goods totaling $2.6 billion, covering a wide range of products, from steel and aluminum to all kinds of consumer goods. This step has led to increased costs for American exporters, which could not but affect their competitiveness in the Canadian market. As a result, a number of U.S. companies have faced reduced sales and loss of market share in Canada, potentially leading to lower revenues and the need to reduce operating expenses. The impact of tariffs has also affected American consumers, albeit indirectly. The increase in costs for American manufacturers has inevitably affected the entire supply chain, leading to an increase in prices for consumer goods. Moreover, the disruption of established trade relations has contributed to increased economic uncertainty, which, in turn, has affected consumer confidence and willingness to spend money across the country. American-Canadian trade disputes have caused unrest in financial markets, forcing analysts and investors to pay closer attention to the economic stability of both countries. The tariffs imposed, initially targeted at individual industries, can trigger a chain reaction, slowing economic growth and fueling inflation due to disrupted logistical connections and increased production costs. What will be the long-term consequences of these trade measures for the United States and Canada? Viewers are welcome to share their thoughts in the comments. This concludes the broadcast. The author expresses gratitude to everyone who took the time to watch. If the presented material was helpful or inspiring, the best support would be to like and subscribe to the channel, which will allow you to stay up to date with new publications. The contribution of each viewer is of great importance. Another video from the channel is available on the screen, which may also be of interest to the